Hello and welcome to the second series of Conversations in Confidence. And today I'm really delighted to welcome Vivienne Artz OBE and CEO of the FTSE Women Leaders Review to talk to us. For everyone watching, it would be great if you could just share a little bit about your personal background, your journey, and what sort of brought you to the role that you're in today.
So I qualified as a solicitor and I worked in private practice in London. When I looked ahead of me, I wasn't so enamoured with partnership. I was sort of on track for partnership because there were so few women ahead of me. And I suppose in retrospect, I wasn't thinking about it in those terms, but that lack of role modelling really had an impact on my decision-making process. So I pivoted and went into financial services. And it was throughout my career in financial services that I came across the advocacy group, FTSE Women. And I wasn't quite sure why they all wanted to be there until I hit the glass ceiling. And it was a really aha moment. I'd heard people talk about it. It was like, are you kidding me? It actually exists. And sure enough, you know, big bruise on my forehead, so to speak. It was like, wow, that really does exist. So for me, that was the moment when I branched out and I thought, I've got to understand this better. Why is there a glass ceiling? I just felt so motivated because it couldn't make sense why it was there. It was unjust and unreasonable. So that brought me to about 5 years ago when I left the London Stock Exchange, and now I have a portfolio career. But my main role, and the one I'm absolutely passionate about, is being Chief Exec for the FTSE Women Leaders Review.
And we've done some work together through Balance the Board and that. And I think some of the findings of that over the last, it's 5th year now?
Yeah, so the review started in 2011 with the Davies Review. And at that time, the government asked Lord Davies to have a look at women's representation on the boards of the FTSE 350. And he came away and said, you know, it's 9.5%. And that's just ridiculous when you consider that women in the workplace was at least 30% in the workplace. When you unpeel the onion by one layer, you can see that NEDs are at 50-50, men and women, which is fantastic. Executive directors, 15%. When you look at the 4 key roles, chairs, 17%, CEOs, 8%, finance directors, 21%. You know, it's not great. I mean, the senior independent role's gone up 61%. That's amazing. That's great. But the other roles honestly have barely moved in 5 years. There's been a teeny bit of progress, but really not the progress you need.
And I think it's interesting that you also include currently the 50 largest private companies now, and that's going to be extended, I believe. Is that right?
This 5-year cycle, we included the 50 largest private companies in the review. So we only have 4 years of data. Interestingly, although they're not as strong on boards, because they're only at 30% boards, they're actually stronger on leadership than the FTSE 350. So the FTSE 350 has on average 36% women in leadership, and the 50 private companies has 37% women in leadership. And we are seeing that the growth in leadership is stronger now than on boards, not least of all because the FTSE 350, most companies have met the target. But there's still more to do on the private company side. But it is interesting to see that there are many more. The percentage of female CEOs in the private company side is higher. In fact, the percentage of everything in leadership on the private company side seems to be higher, apart from the actual high-level board number. And that's to do with a number of things. The other thing is, why did we include the 50 largest private companies? It's because so much of our big business, our big names, our big employers, and those organizations that have a huge impact on our economy and our society are often now privately funded. And we've seen companies delist as well, but still have huge impact. So it makes sense to include them in the review. Although, I mean, it's challenging for them because if you're a public company, you understand transparency in reporting. It comes naturally. If you're a private company, it's less natural. And so, you know, thank you to and well done to those companies who are reporting and providing that transparency, because sometimes it can be really uncomfortable, particularly when your data isn't great or when it moves in the wrong direction.
So the progress overall has been positive, but as
Absolutely.
You quite rightly highlighted, 8% female CEOs and a very low percentage of female chairs as well, and those key influencing roles.
That's really strategy and culture and everything for an organisation.
Yeah, and this is really the nub of why we're doing this. So let's get back to the sort of core purpose of these conversations, which is about confidence, and it's about, talking about confidence and not saying necessarily that men don't also sometimes have a lack of confidence or have challenges with maintaining confidence, but I think it is different for women, and this is why we're having these conversations. So I'd love your thoughts on that. Is it different for women?
I think it is very different for women. I do struggle with the terminology that women lack confidence. I don't think that women naturally lack confidence. If I look at, one of my jobs was as a house matron in a boarding school back in the day. And it was a girls' school. I mean, I've never seen so many confident girls, capable girls. And, I even look at my own daughter growing up. I mean, I wouldn't cross her.
I've got one of those.
Absolutely. And, when you look at younger women or young girls, if they're being brought up in an equal environment, there's sort of no issues there at all. I think the confidence piece is something that we learn through experience and shapes how we engage with the world. And so that I think when we say that women lack confidence, we're often saying, some of those statistics, a woman reads a job description and she feels that she needs to fulfill at least 90% of it before she will apply, and a man can look at it and say, well, hey, as long as I've got more than half of it, I will apply. And the reason why a woman tends to not feel confident enough to apply is as a result of experience, which is you have to prove that you're actually capable. You're not taken at face value in terms of what you say. You have to do more. And I've seen this through my career, as I got to be more senior and so on, and you're on, panels looking at promotions and so on and so forth. And if you just close your eyes and listen to what's being said in the room, the expectation on female candidates is different from that on male candidates. The language used and the amount of evidence that's required for women to prove that they're actually capable of doing the role. You've actually got to be better to be taken seriously, and just what's on paper isn't enough. I remember one of my bosses saying to me, Vivienne, you're very self-confident. The reason I was self-confident was because I knew I was on top of my game. I knew that I was managing more matters than anyone else, that I was leading my team effectively, that I had all of the, the voice of the employee and 360 feedback, which said that I was an excellent manager. I was chairing different industry bodies and committees because they asked me to, because they felt I was an expert in what I was doing. So yes, I had self-confidence because I could prove, and it was that data that enabled me to prove, which is probably why I've got this love of data now, because it's so objective and it demystifies and it takes away the perception. So his perception was that I was self-confident. And it was meant as a, stop and think, Vivienne, yes. Stop. That self-confidence might actually get you to trip over. That self-confidence may not be the positive that you think it is. I didn't necessarily feel as if I was arrogant or whatever, but I knew what I was worth. But you do get that knockback when you know what you're worth, but you still can't make the progress. And hitting the glass ceiling was really tough. It was like, why? We did another study in the organization I was in. This is when I was passionate about understanding the glass ceiling, and we looked at the difference between directors and managing directors. And we even looked at, so we had about 50-50 directors, and we decided to look at the feedback for those directors, the end of year feedback. So was it any different between the men and the women? And actually it wasn't. The women were just as capable as the men based on all of the feedback. But when you looked at the next level, which was managing director, we only had 13% women and everyone else was men. And it was a really useful opportunity to draw on that data and then say, there's got to be something else at play. It's got nothing to do with her talent, does it? So to take that out, and let's have a relook. Why aren't we promoting 50-50 men and women at managing director level if at director level they're on par? And so, going back to that point, I don't think women lack confidence, but they've learned through experience, and sometimes it can be bitter experience, that their confidence in their capabilities can often be misperceived as arrogance or overconfidence. It's just not taken as credibly rather, than it can be with men. So if you step into a room and you're confident. It means you're persuasive.
Mm. Tamara Box spoke wonderfully in one of our earlier interviews about the very fine line that we have to tread. You know, you have to be confident but not overconfident. You have to be pleasant but not too pleasant. It's, you know, I think it is a balancing act, as you referred to it. You clearly have developed that self-confidence based on fact and achievement and feedback, and it isn't, you know, a perception. It's based in achievements and facts. But everybody has times where their confidence fails them a little bit. When has that happened to you, and what have been your strategies to try and build yourself back up again?
I think one of the things I learned is to accept the rejection gracefully. I think we also need to give ourselves a little bit of time. It took me a while to learn that lesson, which is to give myself some space and time to process what's happened, to reflect on it less emotionally than in the moment, because in the moment you feel hurt, hard done by, rejected. You know, you do want to stomp your foot and possibly have a cry or whatever it is. Remember to do that in private. Yes. And go to those people who will love you and will reinforce you, you know, your family and your friends, who will take you into their arms, and you can have that moment of, I'm really upset about that, it's not fair, or it's not right, or I'm just disappointed. You know, somebody better got it as well, you know, it wasn't necessarily mine to get. Take that moment and then come back poised. No one likes a sore loser, and your resilience in the face of rejection is hugely important. The other part of it I think is so hugely important is take the lessons learned. I've learned so much through those times when I've not made it or suffered a setback. Was I actually going for the right thing? Maybe it was in my delivery. Maybe I just didn't have the same qualifications as the other person did, and reflect on that. And so I suppose it's about not taking it personally, but taking all the lessons from it. Take a moment, come back smiling, and don't be a sore loser.
What more can we do, both as, you know, professional women, but also in our careers as managers, as leaders? What can we do to improve the pipeline, particularly for, you know, you mentioned your daughter. I have a very strong-willed, wonderful daughter myself, and, you know, seeing that determination and confidence, as you say, that inner drive that they have now, and how can we try and pave the way a little bit better for them, and to ensure that that next generation is coming through. So hopefully in the next 5 years we're making sure that 9% female CEOs has moved significantly forward.
In order to get to the top of business, it's really important that you're in those revenue generating roles, that you have the opportunity to take on those roles that enable you to lead a business or to manage a P&L, as the case may be. And we find that we're getting much better at recruiting equal numbers of men and women into those revenue generating roles, but then at the middle of their career they tend to move away. Bringing that back again toward the peak of your career, I think, is what is important, and what perhaps a number of firms have yet to realize that opportunity, which is, don't forget if somebody's had revenue generating opportunities earlier in their career. And if you're looking at your talent pipeline now and you're like, you know, C-2, for those incredibly talented people, if they don't have a revenue or haven't had a revenue generating opportunity, why not encourage them to do that? So, you know, if we want to change the talent pipeline, we're going to have to be intentional about it, and we're going to need to make it accessible. And part of that is also about making sure that the culture in those roles is one where women know that their voices will be heard, where their skills will be received and welcome, and where they can thrive, and it's not an environment where the culture is toxic. I mean, there's so many places where the culture is toxic, where you're not appreciated, you're not heard, and sexism is rife, and it still is in certain sectors, which is unfortunate. So those are my thoughts, but we've got to do more, otherwise we won't close this gender pay gap, and we won't deliver the change at the top of business in those roles that really set the strategy and the culture for organisations.
So taking all of that, a couple of things that really resonated there for me is, you know, women are perceived differently often, and sometimes we can struggle to be heard and to be appreciated. So what are the 3 pieces of advice you would give to anyone watching who is on that career journey and they are fighting for their opportunity to be heard and to contribute and to really fulfill their potential? What would be your 3 top tips?
Mentoring is really important. Mentoring can help you see yourself from somebody else's perspective and can help you to navigate your career and perhaps be a little bit more reflective of where your strengths and weaknesses are. I think that's a hugely important part of it. The next part of it is just think about the data. I love this. Do your list. Do your list. Do your list. And these lists are really important. It helps you to navigate the way forward. So write down what you love, what you enjoy, and be honest about what you're really good at and where you need to focus or to build or to develop. And then the third thing is don't dismiss anything. Be open to opportunity. And I think that really helps with supporting your confidence. It's about having an open attitude to what might come. And when those opportunities come, if it's not exactly what you were expecting, don't say no. Explore it first. Some of the most exciting pivots in my career have come from, well, I never really thought about doing that, but why not? I mean, the only reason I ended up leading Women in Banking and Finance was because I had done the closed door thing. I'd said, oh, honestly, I've got so much on at home, I've got so much on in the office, I really need to lean into my career at the moment, breaking that glass ceiling. And then a friend of mine said to me, if you don't apply to be president of Women in Banking and Finance, I will never speak to you again. And I was like, well, that was a bit harsh and tough, but I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to just go for it and see what happens. You're not always successful, but if you don't try, you're not going to get there. And so, yes, that door opened and it just led to a whole different part of life, activity, experiences, networking, people, influences, impact. It was just extraordinary. I wouldn't be doing the role I am today if I hadn't been open to the opportunity with Women in Banking and Finance. It's not that I didn't have to fight for it. I really did. But when I got it, it was game changer, absolute game changer.
And if that friend hadn't encouraged you to really go for it, again, comes back to that. Find your people, have your mentors, have your lists, and be open to opportunities. Love that. Vivienne, thank you so much. It's been an absolute delight talking to you. You have such a wealth of knowledge and insight, and thank you for sharing your personal journey so openly as well. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Holly. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us again. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have, and we look forward to seeing you on the next Conversation in Confidence.